Hello everyone, welcome to my short video that's going to walk us through the steps of taking the tips off of an HA Armstrong 1325. We're going to try to move it down a little bit and turn it into a little bit more of a mid-aspect wing. So all I've really done up to this point is make a line that's going to guide me through the cut, taking just over 3.5 inches off of each side on this one. There really is no science or reason behind that other than just the shape that I think looks about right. So we'll see if it turns into something decent. Alright, so the last time I tried to do this with the 1525, I used a hacksaw, and it was probably the scariest thing I've ever done in my life. So decided to go ahead and set up the wet saw for this one, and then we're just going to make a first pass to cut the tip off right where the line is, right there.
Should I stop?
Yep. Alright, so we've got our first cut made. I think that went pretty well. If you look at it on the side here, you'll note that we went ahead and did actually cut through some of the foam. That's not a big deal. We'll be able to patch it up later. But in order to get this radius that I've cut in here, I want to take another cut off of that at a 45-degree angle, but ended up having to trace it on the other side so I could flip the wing over and make a pass that way. Alright, so that gave me some cuts that were a little bit more controlled than the hacksaw. Unfortunately, when I flipped the wing over to cut that 45 degrees, I probably cut into the original line I had on the top side. But I think what we're going to do now is just take an orbital sander and try to round off those corners and see if we can line up to that pencil line that's shown there. Okay, so I think I got that pretty close, or at least close enough. I made sure to keep the sander, though, at a right angle, so I wasn't trying to round off the leading edge and make that profile yet. I wanted to leave this thing as perpendicular as possible. That way, probably not sure if you can see it there, but there's a little foam core exposed there, so we're going to have to do something with that. And I don't want to round it off yet. All right, so that's a little better look at the foam core. All right, so I want to do the best I can to get the roughly the same length on both sides. So what I'm doing is just using a tape measure, and then I'm going to line up with the serial number there. So it looks like it's just about 7 1/8 inch to the edge of the serial number on that side. Now I'll just flip the tape measure over and measure from the other side, and it's coming in just about 7 1/8 to the near edge of the serial number. So I think that's going to be good enough. All right, so in order to check the profile on either side to see if I got the radius at least close, I went ahead and laid the wing down on a sheet of paper. So I lined up the trailing edge there on the bottom, and then there's a little line that I used to line up the tip, and just trace that out and noted that that's the right hand side. All right, so I did the same thing on the left-hand side, and it looks like I might have a little bit too much of a sharp corner right there, so I probably need to get in and round that off a little bit. All right, so it looks like we've got just a tiny bit of variability in the profile from one side to the other, but I think that's probably going to be good enough. Okay, so this is a pretty good angle or pretty good look at where we are after we've sanded that profile, and again you can see the foam that we've exposed there from the core. I'm going to go ahead and show you the final result when I did this for the 1525, and I wasn't so pleased with the way it came out, because after I made the cut and exposed the foam, I tried to use some solar res to build up the tip a little bit so I could sand the profiles, kind of round off the edges, and so you can actually see through the solar res to see the foam core that's exposed there, but actually feels a lot smoother than it looks there, but it's really hard to build up that edge. So the step that I'm going to try to do with this one for the 1325 is I'm going to go ahead and try to excavate out some of that foam. So maybe go even as much as like 1/4 of an inch deep on that and get rid of that foam, and then I'll mix up some epoxy and fill that in there, and then I'll be able to sand that rail or sand that edge around there to kind of round off the sharpness. All right, so that foam was a little bit harder than I expected it to be. Had to use quite a few different little excavation tools to remove it. And another problem I noticed is that right up near the edge, it was hard to get a nice clean break. So what I went ahead and did with that was I took a pole saw and fit it down in there, and then use that to try to give myself a little bit more carbon fiber to bond onto. So I don't really want to have a layer of foam there that could potentially take in water. I think by the time everything's said and done, though, I'm probably going to end up needing to build that leading edge up just a little bit. But I think the plan for now is just to clean it up as best I can, fill it with epoxy, and then we'll round off that rail. Yeah, so definitely wasn't planning on this, but ended up breaking out this larger saw. It has a little bit coarser set on the teeth here, and it actually works pretty well to give a nice clean removal line for the foam, and then also where the foam tends to get really thin at the ends of at the kind of like the boundary of the foam. This does a good job of cleaning that off pretty sharp. So I think this is a good method. So we just filled that space there with some solar res. I use the version that has the chopped glass, a little bit of filler material in there, so it's a little bit thicker, but fits in there pretty nicely. And again, since we had that 90 perpendicular sander on there, it's a nice even surface to try to fill up. I'm just going to have to put some plastic on it, take it out in the sun for about 5 minutes. Should be all set. So we had a little bit of a mishap with the plan to fill that cavity with the solar activated epoxy. Tried that and had a nice bead in there. Left it out in the sun for a while. Thought it had cured fully. Came back about an hour later and tried to sand the edge down to get the shape that I wanted around that leading edge, and ended up running into a bit of uncured resin. So that entire entire plug of solar activated epoxy that went into that crevice had to be removed. Did a little bit of sanding and cleaning out, and what I ended up doing was going back with just a traditional slow cure epoxy that I added quite a bit of the I guess it's like a fumed silica or silica fume filler to in order to thicken it up a little bit. So I got it just about to the consistency of peanut butter and filled up that crevice, and then just used some sandpaper to round off the leading edge. So I think we've got this pretty well worked out. I kind of like the white tip look there. Might be a new feature that Armstrong might consider adding to their design. But anyway, I think this is going to work. But I will go ahead and put a sheet of fiberglass over this, so a very thin sheet of fiberglass to seal that off, and then sand it down from there. So I went ahead and put the glass on, saturated the fiberglass with the epoxy. I had hoped to kind of bend that around the entire leading edge there, but it doesn't look like it's going to want to do that because it's too sharp of a bend. It keeps popping off, and rather than get a huge sheet and try to anchor it on the other side, I think I'm just going to let that cure. I've got a pretty good line of carbon fiber there that should seal up pretty well with the fiberglass. So worst case scenario, might have to add another sheet, kind of doing the same thing from the other side. But for now, I think this is going to be good as is. Well, I think that's probably about as good as I'm going to get this thing. It looks horrible in the video, but did quite a bit of work with the orbital sander. Used some 80 grit to get the big chunks off, and then went down to 220 grit to get it as smooth as I could, and then finished off with some 800 grit wet sanded. Yeah, it feels really smooth. I'm not concerned about the way it's going to perform, but yeah, it doesn't look as good as straight from the factory. So, but hopefully you all out there are much better at ding repair than I am, and you'll have it looking sharp. But that's all we've got, and hope you enjoyed this, and good luck with your new HAMchop wing.